Hi folks, and welcome back to Isle of Wight Bushcraft. So this time out, guys, we'll be discussing how to rig up a hammock. And if you're new to hammocking or you're unsure of how to rig your hammock, then stay tuned. Hi folks, and welcome back to Isle of Wight Bushcraft. We know that hammocking is becoming ever more popular, so if we're new to it or we're unsure how to do this, what we're going to do in this video is go through a couple of tips and hints on how to rig our hammock. So what we'll do, we'll just take our hammock out of the bag and then we'll go over how the hammock comes out of the bag. And in this instance, I'm working with the DD travel hammock, which is, as many of you will know, is a double layered hammock, and the base layer is waterproof, so you can use it as a bivvy as well. We're going to rig this solely as use for hammocking. So let's take it out of the bag to begin with. So like I said, this is the this particular hammock is the DD travel hammock. A lot of us use DD hammocks in the UK. They are very good actually, but you'll notice that if you're buying, and if you've not bought a hammock before and you're looking to build up on your kit, I would recommend that your first one that you buy is the DD travel hammock, because it will serve as a bivvy as well, and they're very versatile. They're a good all-rounder. But you'll notice when you first get your hammock, you take it out, you'll have loads of this this hammock, this webbing. So if you're new to hammocking and you've not done it before, this don't throw it. You want to keep it, but you want to remove this from the hammock because you don't want to use this webbing to hang your hammock to your trees. The reason being that if you use these to attach your hammock to your tree and it rains, you will get wicking. That means that the water will run down the trunk of the tree, it will wick across this webbing and then into your hammock and your sleeping bag. And if you're out camping at night and it rains and the water's running down the tree, you will wake up damp or wet. And trust me, I've done it. A while ago, a good few years ago now, but I learnt my lesson. It's not pleasant when you're waking up in the early hours of the morning all wet and you can't get dry. So when we take our hammock out, you'll notice you've got lots of this webbing. Well, we just don't need all of this. As we said, we're not going to use this to actually hang the hammock to the tree anyway. But if we pull most of the webbing out, leaving yourself 3 or 4 feet this end, and then what we want to do is we're going to take this, and we've cut ourselves a long stick with a point on, as I just showed. We don't want this point too sharp because fear that we may pierce the sleeve of the hammock. But what we're going to do is just going to put that over the stick and then pull it taut, and then we're going to thread this through the sleeve again for a second time. So we've got 2 loops running through the sleeve of our hammock. So we'll do that. Push it through the sleeve of our hammock. As you can see, that's going through quite nicely. And like I say, this is not difficult to do. It's a little bit fiddly, but it's not too bad. But once we rig it up like this, you've got no chance of any wicking or anything. It's a better way to hang it, you'll see in a moment. So that you'll see now that we've threaded it through once, and then we come back round again twice. So there we are. And what we do now is we pull all the gather up, and we gather that up as much as possible, so that the gather in the sleeve at the end of the hammock is nice and tight. And then what we do now is we'll make these two ends that we've got now, we'll tie a double overhand knot so that we've got a loop like so. So we, as we said, we take our two ends and then simply we just tie an overhand, and then we go a double overhand and then pull that taut. It's as simple as that. And then we just cut off our tag ends there and we've got our loop. And I'll show you why we do this in a moment. So now we can pull that knot really tight. There we go. And maybe we can put that round a stick or something, an anchor point, and just really make sure that that is tight. That's in actual fact, the more you pull it, the tighter that will get. So there we are. And then what we do is we just loosen that up and balance those loops out so that they're equal, like so. There we go. So that's what we're looking for. And you could even tuck that knot inside the sleeve of the hammock, like so. Just tuck that knot in there and there, and then just slide the loop round a bit. Tuck the knot inside so it gives you a nice tidy double loop. There we are, you can see our double loop. So that's what we want at the end of the hammock. Now I'll explain to you the reason why we want that. Now the reason we want this double loop is that's what we're going to attach our carabiner to, and then the carabiner will then also attach to the other end of the Whoopie sling. Now you may be thinking, well, why not just thread a single piece of webbing through the sleeve of the hammock, tie a loop at one end and then a loop at the other, so you've kind of effectively got that, and then put your carabiner in between those two loops. Well, there's a reason why we don't do that, and I'll show you that now. There's the if we put our carabiner at the other end of the Whoopie sling, don't worry, I'll explain more about this in a moment, but just for the moment we've tied this double loop, as I said a moment ago. If we just thread a single piece of webbing through and then double loop it and then attach that to our carabiner, that's an easier way. But when I pull that taut, imagine our hammock's being pulled taut, okay, can you see what happens? The carabiner lays sideways on, and of course any water that does happen to track down will easily be able to track across that carabiner and then into the webbing. So that's why we don't thread these loops through the end of the hammock sleeve in that fashion, because it will make the carabiner sit sideways on, which makes the tracking of water far more likely. And we want to eliminate the chance of that happening completely. So now if I take the carabiner and I attach the end of the hammock, and we've got our double loop through the carabiner, and now I pull tight, you'll see that now the carabiner sits facing downward instead of sideways on. And if any water does happen to track along the Whoopie sling, as we know, water will always run downhill. It will then run down the carabiner and drip here, as opposed with the other method. Remember, if we said if we put a single piece of webbing through and then put a double loop either end, the carabiner would sit that way. Water can track across far easier, but this way we make sure that the carabiner sits vertically, so that eliminates the possibility of water tracking. That's the reason why we do it that way. Now again, another question that you may be asking yourselves is why not just put the loop through once and tie a single knot and just have the single loop? Well, you could do that, but as you know, when this webbing comes with a hammock, it is doubled. So the reason for having two loops is just extra strength, and particularly if you're a little bit heavier. I'm 12 stone, maybe a tad over 12 stone, so I'd get away with a single, probably no problem at all. But just to be doubly sure, you've got that double loop, you know that that's strong, that's not going to break, and there's nothing worse than a hammock breaking in the night. Again, just a word of caution guys, when you're doing those knots, that triple or double, probably best to do a triple overhand knot. Just make sure you pull them really, really, really tight. Obviously test your hammock when you put your hammock up, and then leave a little bit of tag on those knots when you slide that knot into your sleeve, and then you should be okay. So what we'll do now is we'll hang the hammock up and carry on with rigging the rest of it. So now we have our double loops at the end of the hammock. What we do now, the next part of the rigging is attach a carabiner of your choice. This is a lightweight one, but the cheapest will do okay as long as they will carry the weight. There we are. These are climbing carabiners, incidentally. You don't want to get a lightweight one, a climbing carabiner, so it takes the weight. So that's the first part of the rigging. So now that we have the carabiner attached to the end of our hammock, what we do then is we want to attach a whoopie sling. Now if you're not sure what these are, most of us use these now. They're made of Dyneema or Amsteel, and apparently these will take the weight of a car. They're very, very strong. So what these do is they allow us to attach our hammock to our tree hugger and make the necessary adjustments with ease, rather than having to keep taking the tree hugger off and readjusting that, which is a pain. Now if you're not aware of what tree huggers are, or have not used tree huggers before, I'll explain what they are. As we said earlier, we don't want to be using the webbing from our hammock straight to the tree. So we've got our loops. So far we've got our climbing carabiner, lightweight climbing carabiner, and our whoopie sling. So you'll notice on one end of the whoopie sling there is a loop, and we can attach that to our tree hugger. And then you'll see that there's this loop on the other end, and we can adjust that simply by loosening the tension and then pulling that loop through, making that loop bigger and bigger, of course lengthening or shortening the whoopie sling, thereby adjusting our hammock, or the distance of our hammock, or the hang of our hammock between the trees. So that's why we use the whoopie slings, and again highly recommended. So we have our hammock, we have the loops, we have the climbing carabiner attached to the loops, and we have the whoopie sling attached to the carabiner as well. So next is the tree hugger. Now the tree hugger, or tree strap, whichever you prefer, is a strong piece of material that we wrap around the tree, preferably twice, and then the end of the tree hugger. This is a DD's own tree hugger, but you can make up your own with strong webbing, which I've done as well. In this instance I'm just using these at the moment, these DDs, just for purposes of demonstration. These newer ones are perfectly good. But you wrap these twice around the tree, and 2 loops in the end, and then once they're wrapped around the tree you central those loops up, and then we put the carabiner through those 2 loops. And once that's round the tree and the carabiner is hanging from the tree huggers, then we attach our whoopie sling into the carabiner as well. And again, just to re-emphasize, guys, that these carabiners need to be of climbing quality, because they have to support our weight. So what I'll do is I'll attach the tree hugger to the tree now. So there we are. We just put our tree hugger around the tree, and if we can, if the tree's not too thick, these are about 1 foot diameter cedars, so perfect. Wrap it round twice. They will, if you just, if the tree's thicker, you can only put them round once. That's not a problem. They will hold once. Well, they hold me anyway, and I'm 12 stone. But there we are. Twice round, then we put our carabiner onto here. You can use a thicker strap, tree strap or tree hugger, and use the marlin and spike method. That's in another video. I've got another video on that, on how to use that. But if you're just starting out, probably best to use this method. So what we do now is we take the adjustable loop of the Whoopie sling and then attach that to the carabiner and the tree hugger. There we are. Now normally I would put these tree huggers higher, but this is just for demonstration purposes. Again, I have done another video on how to actually put up a hammock and tarp, but this is just for demonstration purposes. Normally they would be kind of neck head height. But you can see what we can do now is we can take the Whoopie sling and we can adjust by pulling this tag end here. We can adjust the height of our hammock, and again normally you'd have about a 30-degree angle there, but this is just to demonstrate how to rig the hammock. There we are. We've adjusted our hammock. Another thing as well is when you've adjusted your Whoopie slings, just make sure that you stretch out this sleeving part of the Whoopie sling, because they could slip. I think some call it milking the sling, a bit like milking a cow. But there we are. That's what we do there. So there we go. Now you'll notice that because we've used that double loop through the end of the hammock, that carabiner is sat lovely, and of course when we put our weight on it, it sits beautifully. Another quick tip is always put the carabiner, or always do put the carabiner so that the biggest end is this end of the Whoopie sling rather than that end. It's just a minor thing, but if any water does track down, then it will drip there as opposed to here. It's further away from the webbing. Now another thing, you may be thinking, well, you've got two carabiners there. Yeah, the reason being I use two carabiners is the carabiners, as well as attachment points for our hammock, they're also acting as water breaks as well, which is why we're rigging the hammock out with these. Because once we rig this up, we leave these permanently attached to our hammock. What they do, how they act as a water break is, as I've explained before, particularly in really heavy rain, water will funnel into the trunk, down the branches, it will run down the trunk and it will wick down your tree hugger. Now we've got the metal climbing carabiner there. Well, obviously the water should run off of there, but if any escapes and runs down our Whoopie sling, then we've got a secondary water break here. So even in torrential rain, we shouldn't have any wicking into our hammock, because the water will run down into our hammock if we don't have these. Now I've been out in some really heavy rain in a hammock and tarp, and I've had no wicking whatsoever using this method. So there we are. So now what we'll do is we'll look at rigging the inner part of the hammock. Now I've got the hammock just hung up. Now as we look inside, you'll see the bug net. You get a bug net with a DD travel hammock, and you'll see these spreader bar sleeves here. Well, we don't need to worry about putting the spreader bars in. I find that they're a lot of fiddling about. But you'll notice that I've put a little piece of shock and a lightweight carabiner, and we use that so we can attach that to our overhead ridge line or utility line. If you're not sure what a utility line is, I have got a video on making and using a utility line. I'll put a link in the description box so that you can check that out if you want to know how to make and use those. So we attach this to the ridge line now. So what we're doing is we're just attaching these to our prusik loops on the ridge line. There we are. So we can see our bug net that's nicely suspended. What we do now is, rather than using, when you get your hammock, you will get some fiberglass spreader bars that thread in through these sleeves, but I found it much better to use a couple of pieces of stick with a point at each end. It's far easier, and then you can just put them insert those sticks with a pointy end in these webbing sleeves here, and I find that works far better, and they don't slip out then either. So what I do is I cut a couple of pieces of thin hazel stick and insert those into there, and that will spread the bug net apart. So there we are. We're just putting a point in, like so. And what we'll do is we'll offer this up to the sleeve so we can measure the length of the stick. So there we are. We can just pull the other tab, put our thumb there, and that gives us our length. And then all of course we do is just cut one the same length as this one. What we do is just take a point and insert it into these tabs. Now these tabs, you can put the stick right the way through, but all we do is we just angle the tab and put the stick at an angle so that the point is under pressure in the middle of that tab. And I've used this loads of times, and that won't slip. Then we just insert it in the other side. And you can also put these in as well when before you erect the bug net. But there we are, you see. So you angle those tabs and then put the pointed stick or your spreader bar that we've made across those two tabs. And I've found that's much better way of doing it than actually using and having to thread those fiberglass spreader bars that they provide with you. This is far better. We'll do the same the other end. There we go. So there we are, we almost have our hammock rigged. So we've got our webbing double threaded through the webbing sleeve at the end of each end of the hammock. We've got that. We've got our climbing carabiner attached to that double looped webbing. We have our Whoopie sling attached. And then another climbing carabiner. And then our tree hugger. A couple of more things left to do. Now another good thing to do when rigging a hammock is you will find that when you're sleeping in your hammock, getting in and out of the hammock, unzipping your bug net to get out can be a bit of a kerfuffle. So what we do is we open the zips, and we can do this both sides if we want, or just the one side. I do both sides. We can open our zips to their full range, so right to the end, and then we can use some paracord to tie a line between each zip tag, what we call a trolley line. Then that way in the night we can pull the trolley line to do up our zips, or we can just put our foot, we can reach for the trolley line, put our foot in the trolley line and push down with our leg to undo the zips. And that can save a lot of mucking about in the early hours of the night. So we'll do that now. So there we are, just ordinary paracord will do to make our trolley lines for our bug net zips. So you'll see we've got two zip tags, there's an outside and an inner. It's the inner one we want, and we attach our trolley line to this inner zip tab. And all we really need to do is just thread the paracord through, and then just tie a simple overhand knot. Simple as that. That's all it needs. There we go. So that's one end attached. Now what we do is we run this along the hammock up to the other end. And again, we take our inner tab, we just put that through the hole of that zip tab, and again a simple double overhand knot. And that's it. So we have the trolley line connected to this end of the hammock via that internal zip tab, and the same the other end as well. So there we see our trolley line, and that runs through the length of the hammock. And we can, like I said a moment ago, we can either do this just on the one side, but for a little bit more versatility we can do it on this side of the hammock as well. So we've got one each side. Some of the earlier hammocks only have a zip one side, so you'll only have to do it one side. But the later ones do have two. So there you see, all we need to do now in the night is grab our trolley line and then just pull that, and you can see we can then close our zip without the need of having to try and reach down the bottom of the end of our hammock and close the bug net. So there we are. And then in the night, to undo the zip, all we need to do is pull down as far as we can with our hand, and then just put our foot in the trolley line and then push down with our leg. And that's a lot easier, I found, than trying to get up in your sleeping bag in the night and reach forward to try and undo the zip so you can have a big enough gap to get out in. So another useful way. So that's another good thing to do in rigging your hammock. So there's one last thing to do, and we're fully rigged. So one last thing to fit, that's one of these. Again, this is one of DD's own ones. I'm not sure if other companies make them. You can make them yourself, I suppose. They're not that difficult, but it's what's called a hammock sleeve, or a snake skin, more often known as. And basically what it is, it's a tubular piece of material, and all we do is we slide this over our Whoopie sling. There we go, we've just put that up on there. Reattach our hammock there. There we go, and all we've got to do is just slide that up the Whoopie sling, once we've adjusted it of course, for a hammock, and that just stays there. And then when we've finished and we're breaking camp, we just loosen up that cinch off and then pull that over our hammock, and it's already good to go for next time. And that keeps it tidy and ready for use next time. Also, it's waterproof as well, so it protects our hammock from mud, leaf litter, another water of course, and stuff like that. So it keeps our hammock compact, neat, protected each time we use it. So always put a hammock sleeve or snake skin on our Whoopie sling, and that's simplicity itself. So there we are, that's all rigged up, ready to go. So when we're finished, all we do is we just take out our spreader bars, unclip our bug net, and then we just uncinch our snake skin, and then we pull that, just slide that over the hammock. Just cinch the end up. There we are. There we are. And all we need to do then is just loosen off our Whoopie slings. And then just disconnect our Whoopie sling from the tree hugger. We can let that lay on the ground now because we've got our snake skin in. Then we can just unattach the tree hugger, put the carabiner through the two loops, like so. Reattach to the Whoopie sling, and there we go. So we've got our tree hugger, carabiner, Whoopie sling, carabiner, hammock. And then simple as that. And then we just have to fold it up, put it back in our hammock stuff sack, and that's ready to go every time. Keeps our hammock compact, neat, tidy, and it's all ready rigged and ready to go. As I said, it's just a case of folding the hammock up and then putting it in the stuff sack. And that's a good thing about the snake skin as well. It does make packing the hammock away into its stuff sack a lot easier. So we just compress that in. And then all we've got to do then is just pull our ready attached Whoopie slings and tree huggers, coil those up, put those in the bag like so, and then just cinch up the end of the stuff sack, and there we go, ready for next time, ready rigged, ready to go. So it's just a case of attach, hang our bug net and put our sleeping system inside, and then when we go or when we leave, snakeskin over the top, fold up, back into our stuff sack, and it's ready to go again for next time. So I've personally found that that's a good way to rig a hammock system. It's you're not going to have any issues with water or tracking down into the hammock, and you'll get a good night's sleep like that. So there we are, guys. Hope you found that helpful, and I'll put the links to the hammock and the other bits and pieces in the description box below. But if you've got any questions or comments, as always, just leave a comment and I'll endeavour to answer all. But thanks for joining me, guys. I appreciate that, and all being well, I'll see you in the next video. So take care, and bye for now.